I'm Christine, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my March reading mid-month wrap-up. Alright, so it's now the middle of March and I'm so excited to chat about all of the books that I have read for the first half of the month. I have had some amazing reads, some kind of disappointments, but mostly good ones that are new favorites. I've read 20 books so far for the month and I'm so excited to chat about these ones. So as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or full reviews on any of the books I talk about, I do review every book that I read. And you can always get to my book reviews on Goodreads, which is always linked in the description of the video. Down in the description as well, I'm going to link every book and every author that I talk about. So if you miss any of the books and you want to go back and grab one or see which one I was talking about, they're all going to be in the description as well. So with all of that out of the way, let's get into the 20 books that I've read so far this month. So my first read of the month was Empire of Temptation by Mila Finelli. So this is the first book in her new New York State of Mafia romance series. This is a new Mafia series from this author. So she previously had written her Kings of Italy series, which was a lot of fun. And then now this is a new series. It kind of exists in the same world, but in this one it feels very different. This one I ended up giving 4 stars to. This one the author described as Mafia meets small town. So in here the hero is a mafia boss and he comes over from Italy and he is in New York and he is hiding out. So there's a little bit of a secret identity, hidden identity type of situation. And basically he shows up for reasons. So he runs into the heroine who he is purposely seeking out. And when he sees her, he's kind of just like enraptured by her. So in here, the heroine is the owner of her family's restaurant. And so she's been working there and kind of struggling. Like the food's not great, the service isn't great. And so the hero kind of shows up and points all of these things out to her. He's like, the recipes, the name of the restaurant, like everything is wrong here. We need to do an overhaul. So basically from there, he just kind of becomes an everyday part of her life and he ends up bankrolling like her entire restaurant overhaul and helping her remodel and provides her chefs and comes up with recipes and kind of all of those things. So very much like him taking care of her. If you enjoy Mila Finelli's writing already, those very much like possessive heroes who will do anything to take care of the heroine, this book is definitely that. Like I said, this one feels a little bit different than her other series just because it's more small town meets mafia. So a little more low stakes, I guess you could say. There is some still mafia action in here. And it goes from there. I had a fun time. 4 stars for this one. Next up, I ended up reading a fantasy romance. So this is The Goddess of by Randy Garner. This one, first of all, the cover is absolutely stunning. Was that the reason I picked it up? Possibly. So it recently got an audiobook, so I decided to jump into it because it was on my Hoopla as well, so through my library. This one though, it was just okay for me. I ended up giving it 3 stars. In this one, the heroine is the daughter of the High Sea Goddess, and basically she doesn't have any power or titles of her own, but she is kind of important to her mother because she is the key to a curse that was put on her mother centuries ago. Basically, she has to eventually marry a god from an opposing family, and so her arranged betrothal, arranged marriage is about to happen. So she decides, you know what, I don't actually want anything to do with this. I'm going to take off. So she ends up calling this other god to help her, and he basically barters with her and is like, you're going to owe me a favor and I will get you to the mortal world. So it kind of goes from there with her meeting somebody there, and then just kind of like, it just felt very YA to me, the writing and the characters. They're supposed to be older, but they just felt very young. And so I don't know, it was okay for me. Honestly, the cover and the blurb like grabbed my attention more than the actual plot and story. So 3 stars for this one. It was just okay. Next, I read Hold Me While You Wait by Kimberly Brown, and this one I absolutely loved. I gave it 4.5 stars. I did recently get a special edition of this one, but I'm just obsessed with the original cover more, so I'm going to share that here. This book was so good. If you love single parent romances, then in this one we get a single dad hero and a single mom heroine, and it is their romance. This one I really enjoyed how the romance was very much kind of like low stakes. The characters were very much into one another. The chemistry was just so palpable as soon as they meet, but there was no like conflict or miscommunication within their relationship, which I felt like was just so healthy and nice to see. So it's more of like the external conflicts and some other things they have going on with their exes that kind of brings the drama to the story. So like I mentioned in this one, the hero is a single dad to his daughter and she's a teenager. He's been raising her since she was a baby on his own, and he and his daughter both have vitiligo. So the beginning of the story is the hero's daughter starting a new school and she's getting bullied by people because of her skin condition. And so the heroine's niece, who the heroine, she's a single mom as well, and so she has a young son and she's also the guardian to her niece. And so basically in here, her niece and the hero's daughter are in the same grade. So her niece sees his daughter getting picked on and she's like, absolutely not. So she ends up kind of attacking and defending her at school. And so they both get called in to the principal's office, and that's kind of how the hero and heroine start to be in one another's lives. So like I mentioned, the relationship between the hero and the heroine, it was just so healthy and nice to see. I loved their chemistry. It was just so good. Loved how much they were there for one another and wanting to like blend their families. The complications in the story are more with their ex situations. And so one thing I did like about this is how those characters weren't like villainized. Obviously they did some bad things, but I liked to see how it kind of all came to be in the end. So yeah, this one super good, really loved it. I know that the audio for this one, I grabbed it from my library. I think it's on KU as well. So definitely check it out. 4.5 stars for Hold Me While You Wait. Next up is Legacy by Nora Roberts. So this one I gave 4 stars to, a very high 4 stars though. This is actually one of my favorites that I've read from Nora. So with Nora books, I don't even read the synopsis. I just jump into them. And this is, I think, one of her newer-ish releases from the cover style. I'm kind of going by that. So in this one, we follow the heroine, and basically from when she's a child, we see her that she was raised by her single mom, and her single mom is this like self-made kind of fitness guru type of woman. And so basically in here, her mother has her own like yoga videos and fitness workouts and kind of all of those things. So her and her mother have a very complicated relationship. Like her mother cares about her, but her mother is very much like a businesswoman first and maybe a mother second. So she definitely has left her daughter alone a lot. So we see the daughter become a teenager. She's very independent, and she decides when her mother's out of town one weekend for work that she wants to get into this business as well. She has her own ideas for kind of workout videos, yoga videos, and she decides to kind of gather up some friends from high school or people she meets at high school and is like, hey, could you film? Could you edit? Like, could you do this? And so they come together and come to her like penthouse for the weekend where she's already kind of choreographed her own fitness workouts, and she's very business minded like her mother. And so she ends up filming a bunch of videos, and then they end up like kind of taking off, and it becomes her own business as well. So we catch up to her later, and she now has her own $1 billion business as well, kind of doing her own workout videos. Her mother and her, they still like have a relationship, but it's very much kind of like not strained, like it's not terrible, but it's just kind of like they don't see each other a lot. It's not very affectionate. So the heroine in here is actually really close to her grandparents. We saw at the beginning of the story that she actually stayed with them for a little bit when her mother was off like doing work and kind of doing things like that, and also dealing with like a stalker situation. And so the heroine has just always been really close with her grandparents, who are super loving and caring. And so now her grandmother passes away, and so she decides to go back to the small town that is her mom's hometown and stay with her grandfather. And so she goes there, and when she's there, she ends up running into kind of her old like childhood little crush, who is the hero. And basically now he is a widower, he's a single dad, and it kind of goes from there. I will say with Nora books, I don't really read them for the romance at all. Like those I always feel like are just not, they don't hit right for me, I guess you could say. But the characters and their families and the side characters and friendships, like all of those connections and the romantic suspense elements, that's what I read it for and enjoy. So overall, I just really loved the everyday life for these characters and the suspense elements as well. So yeah, 4 stars for Legacy. Next up, I read Sisters in Arms by Kaya Alderson. So this is a historical fiction debut. This one I gave 3.5 stars to. This one was a historical fiction that had been on my TBR for a long time. Like I said, this is a debut from the author. And in here we follow the women of the 6888, which was the only all-black battalion of the Women's Army Corps during World War II. So in here, I thought the story would focus more on the wartime kind of efforts that they did and the service that they did over there, which basically during World War II, they were brought over to kind of go through the backlog of mail for servicemen and women. Like I think there was like 3 years worth of backlog of mail. And so they ensured that all the servicemen and women who were out there were getting letters and receiving and sending to their loved ones. So we kind of get like a little glimpse of that, but it's towards the end of the story. But basically in here, we're following 2 women in particular, and we kind of see their entire kind of backstories or their characters, where we get to see them deciding to join the army and kind of boot camp and all of those things and jobs they take even after boot camp before going overseas and serving in the war. And so we really get to know their characters, and kind of it really focuses on their friendship, kind of animosity sometimes towards one another. We see the racism that they deal with as well. They are both Northern women who are serving in a segregated army boot camp, and so we very much see the dynamics at play with that. So it kind of goes from there. So I liked the characters, but I kind of was expecting more of like the wartime historical fiction aspect. So it was good. It's just not like a favorite, but I did like the author's writing, so I'd check out more from them in the future. So like I said, 3.5 stars for this one. Next up, I had an early copy of My Silver Lining by Laura Pavlov. So this is book 2 in her Rosewood River series, and this one I really enjoyed. I gave it 4/4.5 stars. This is definitely my favorite in the series so far. I know we're only on book 2, but I enjoyed this one a lot more than book 1. In this one, the hero and the heroine, we've kind of seen both of them already in the series. So basically in here, the hero of this one, he is the brother of the hero of book 1, and the heroine is the best friend of the heroine of book 1. So we've already kind of seen them, and now they are living in the same place. Basically, the hero in here, he is trying to get his house house renovated, and so he ends up staying at his brother's house. And at the same time, the heroine is kind of in town for a little bit and staying at her best friend's house, which is the same house. So they're kind of in the same property together. So these two kind of get off to a not so great start, and then it goes from there where they realize they could both kind of help one another out at the same time. So this is a fake dating romance where the heroine, she's told her whole family she's going to be bringing a date to her grandfather's 80th birthday, and so she's like, I need a date quickly. And then the hero needs a fake date as well because he's kind of in like this sticky situation with his work where basically his boss is trying to push the boss's daughter onto the hero, and like that woman as well is kind of like very pushy towards him. And so he's like, I just kind of want to like get out of this as easily as I can without ruffling any feathers since I still work here. And so he's like, yeah, oh, I can't like date you because I have a girlfriend. So I always like with a fake dating a situation where they both need help like equally, so it feels kind of like they're on the same page. This one was just so cute and fun. I love the banter that Laura's small town romances have, and just kind of like all of the found family aspect. I just love all the character appearances we get as well from other Laura Pavlov books. So if you've read the previous series and you've met Beefcake, the little kid in that series who was featured throughout, he makes appearances in this book as well because he is the nephew of the hero. So if you want a small town, a fake dating, lots of banter, that forced proximity, this one, definitely check it out. This is my Silver Lining. I gave it 4/4.5 stars, and it will be coming out the week that this video goes live. All right, so then I carried on to another ALC that I had. So this is Buried Dreams by Natasha Madison. This is book 3 in her Dream series, and this is an author that I have read like a ton of her backlist, a ton of her different series, but this particular series, the Dream series, has been my favorite. They're more emotional and angsty, which I appreciate. So this one is a new favorite of mine from this series. I gave it 5 stars. This book just recently came out, so I think it just came out on the 14th. So by the time this video is up, this book will be out. So definitely go check it out. It's going to be on Kindle Unlimited. The audiobook in particular was fantastic as well. Basically in here, this whole series is kind of centered around this group of friends who got into a car accident, a tragic car accident where some of their friends in the car accident had passed away. So that was like a decade ago when they were all teenagers, and so they've all kind of dealt with it in different ways. So in this book, we get a lot of just very like traumatic pasts and some broken heroes and heroines. A lot of them kind of left home, and so now they're returning to their small town for the first time and just kind of dealing with all of those feelings that they still have. So this one is a second chance between the hero and the heroine who were actually dating when they were teenagers, when that car accident happened, and their lives kind of just got torn apart from there. And so now it's years later, and the heroine has to come back to their small town. She had moved away, and she comes back because her mother ends up having a heart attack at the beginning of the story, and she wants to come back and be with her mom while she's healing, as well as run her mom's bakery while her mother is recouping. So she runs into the hero who was her first love, her ex. They basically thought they were going to get married eventually in life until that accident had happened. So now the hero is a single father, and it kind of goes from there where they're both around one another, very much hate to love vibes. Like they have some huge animosity towards one another, but also there's still that like chemistry and feelings. This one, like I said, I just loved it. Their chemistry and their history, it just all came together so beautifully. Love this one so much. Like that hate to love banter, I'm just obsessed with. So yeah, I gave this one 5 stars, highly recommend. Next, I read Curvy Girl Summer by Danielle Allen. So this one I gave 3.5 stars to. I did round up to 4 stars though on Goodreads. So this one, it definitely has a slower start, which I had kind of heard about before going into it, but I was kind of just along for the ride, here to see what was going to happen. This one we get plus size rep, and basically in here, the heroine, she wants to have a date by her 30th birthday. Her kind of friends and family, mostly her family, kind of give her a hard time, and so she's like, you know what, I want to have a date by the time I'm 30. So we kind of see a lot of her online dating and her hookups. So the story starts with her hooking up with other people and just kind of like one night stand situations. And so it kind of goes from there where eventually she ends up meeting the hero, who is a bartender at a bar she's going to, and he tells her like, why don't you online date? And so he kind of just like gets involved in her dating life, her dating stories, her dating fails. So it kind of goes from there. What I really liked is how the characters very much knew what they wanted, knew what they were not willing to settle for. So that also kind of runs into parts that I had issues with. So there's like a miscommunication kind of in the book, which I feel like they know so well like what they want and they're willing to say it. So like that miscommunication just felt kind of off for me. I will say overall this was a solid listen. So yeah, 3.5 stars for me. Next up is If You Give a CEO a Chance by Anne Einerson. So I love this author's writing. I had an early copy of this one. It is out now. It just came out on March 14th. So definitely recommend checking it out. The whole series is on KU. And basically in here, I gave this one 4 stars. And this one was a lot of fun where we have a second chance kind of situation between the billionaire hero, who was a former / now he's a retired hockey player, and the heroine, who is his live-in private chef. So this one, I just love the dynamics between the hero and the heroine. Basically, they had kind of a weekend fling years ago. I want to say like a decade ago. And so we've kind of seen mentions of their relationship kind of hinted at throughout the series building up to this book. So I was very excited to get to their story. And in here, like I said, the hero is a billionaire, and he has recently been diagnosed with celiac disease as an adult. And so he needs a allergy-friendly chef. And so he ends up hiring the heroine. Kind of, he doesn't want to, but he's kind of pushed to hire her. So it kind of goes from there with the heroine moving in to the hero's place, and it is just kind of their animosity towards each other at first because they have some complicated feelings about their past, which they have to kind of uncover. Super fun and sweet. I love in here the hero's entire family, very much like those found family vibes, and they just take the heroine in as well. There were some fun bantering moments in here, and yeah, I just had a fun time. I feel like this author just always delivers on the tropes that her titles and covers kind of suggest, so it was a fun time. Billionaire Hero, Live-In Chef, super fun, 4 stars for me. Next, I read Out of the Woods by Hannah Bottom Young, and this is a new favorite for me. I gave this one 5 stars. This is a new release from this author. It just came out in January of the year. I love this one to pieces. I've read all of this author's books now, and they just always hit for me. They are contemporary romances, but they very much have kind of an emotional element to them. So in this one, we get a marriage in trouble, a marriage in crisis moment, which is one of my favorite subtropes. I love that kind of like second chance-ness of it all. And so in here, the hero and the heroine have been high school sweethearts. They got married as teenagers, and now it's years later, and they're kind of in that situation where the heroine's starting to question if they belong together anymore. Like, do they even appreciate each other? Kind of all those little moments that they know each other so well, but at the end of the day, like, are they meant to be? Like, she kind of feels like she is just kind of lost in their relationship instead of having her own identity. And so I really appreciated that the author as well kind of shares how she is married to her high school sweetheart. So kind of those feelings of finding your soulmate before you really know yourself very well. So the heroine's kind of questioning if they've grown apart. Are they still in love? Is this meant to be? Kind of things like that. So she ends up going on a kind of couples wilderness retreat with her husband, and it goes from there, and you start to realize that of course they're meant to be, and there's all these cute little sweet things that her husband does for her. And I feel like if you've been in a long-term relationship, whether that's a marriage or a relationship, that this book feels very raw and real to kind of all of those feelings that you have of being in a long-term relationship. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. 5 stars, so good. Love these characters to pieces. Next, I read Bryony and Roses by T. Kingfisher. So this is an author that I have been just kind of like reading a bunch of their books recently, off and on. And so this one I grabbed from the library. It's a novella. This is like a Beauty and the Beast retelling, but kind of has like a little bit of new elements to the story as well. And so this one I gave 4 stars to. This was very atmospheric and just a fun time. This is a very quick read. It's less than 200 pages. And if you enjoy like Beauty and the Beast retellings like me, this one has all of those kind of like classic moments of that fairy tale, but there are some like fresh new things to the story as well, which I liked. So yeah, 4 stars for this one. Really enjoyed it. All right, next up I read an early copy of Beautiful Exile by Catherine Cowles. This book is coming out the day that this video is going live. Highly recommend picking up this book. This is my new favorite in the series. So this one I gave 5 stars to. This is the 4th book in Catherine's Sparrow Falls series. So this one is small town, romantic suspense. And here we have a billionaire hero who he is the owner of a hockey team in town. And then the heroine is a reclusive artist, and she's also kind of a heroine in hiding moment. So I love this one to pieces. The heroine is one of my new favorite Catherine Cowles heroines. I loved her so much. This one has Brother's Best Friend as well. With the hero and the heroine, they meet at a gym one day, and the hero is instantly drawn to the heroine. And then after the fact, he realizes like, hold up, this is my best friend's sister. And so it kind of gets a little bit complicated and goes from there. I love the heroine in here, how she's so strong, and she has some things that happened in her life, which you see in the prologue, which is super tragic, of things that she is just wanting to kind of keep herself safe and secure all the time. And so the hero in here, he very much is drawn to her immediately. And I loved in here how he is a hero who falls super hard and just wants to be there for her and caretake and support her and just like all those protective vibes, which I love. The entire family in here is just so good. The heroine is one of the children of the Coulson family that the series has been kind of following. Highly recommend. Has some suspense elements as well. Like I said, one of my new favorites from Catherine. So yeah, 5 stars for Beautiful Exile. Next up is Our Infinite Fates by Laura Stevens. So this one I kept seeing all over the place. It was one of the Book of the Month choices for this month, and so I decided to grab it, grabbed the audio and checked it out. And this one I ended up giving 3, maybe 3.5 stars, but very much like a 3. I feel like this one was solid. It was good, but like sadly not a new favorite or anything. The kind of blurb for this one grabbed my attention. So it was compared to The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, which is one of my favorites. And also the tagline like really grabbed my attention. So let me read it. So it says, they've loved each other in 1,000 lifetimes. They've killed each other in every one. So basically this has reincarnation, which I really enjoy reading. And this one is more YA. So just know that going in. It's a YA fantasy. So in this one, the heroine, she remembers all of her past lives, and she always ends up getting murdered before her 18th birthday. And it's always by the same person who's basically the supernatural being whose soul and kind of survival is tethered to her. So in here, it is told in kind of dual timeline or multiple dual timelines where we get present day of things happening with these characters. And then we also flash back to all of their moments throughout history, like going back thousands of years. So in here, there were moments that I really enjoyed. I liked how we kind of go all over the globe, all over these different settings across the world. There was also like gender fluidity with the characters, which I feel like works really well with reincarnation. So I did like that aspect to it. And there is some moments in here where we kind of get some poems or books kind of within the book, which I always like to read. I feel like the writing was really good, and there were some really interesting conversations in here as well, kind of towards the end of the book, which the end of the book is the parts that I liked. So it was basically kind of the plot and pacing of it all felt very slow throughout the middle portion, and then the end I really liked. I feel like that was all done really, really well. Those were the parts that hooked me, but was it worth the entire read to get there? I don't know. Kind of mid about this one, so 3 stars for me. Next, I read Tip Me at Twilight by Elisa Kleypas. So this is book 3 in the Hathaway series. I'm currently a co-host for a Hathaway's read-along. So this was our book for the month. So here is the gorgeous cover. Love the purple details on here. And then we have a beautiful step back moment as well. So like I said, this whole series is a reread for me. So I originally gave this book 3 stars. I'm giving it 3 stars again. This one is just my least favorite in the entire series. All the other books in the Hathaway series I've given 5 stars. This one though is just very not it for me. This one reads very different than the rest of the series. I feel like this one reads more like a contemporary kind of billionaire type of hero, where the hero in here owns a hotel. He's very wealthy and successful, and the heroine is at his hotel, and they kind of meet, and he immediately wants her in his life, which I feel like the hero in here never really worked for me. And in this time during my reread, I kind of clocked why that was, which he specifically thinks in kind of like his inner thoughts, inner monologue at one point, that he feels like he deserves the heroine. And I feel like I don't like my heroes like that. I'm more of a person who likes heroes who don't feel worthy of the heroine and kind of have to like fight that, overcome that, realize that of course they're good enough for the heroine. And so I don't know, his just like feelings of always getting everything he wanted and just feeling like he should have her too because he wants her, it just kind of like rubbed me the wrong way. So he's not my favorite hero. I love the heroine. I love the Hathaway's family overall. I love a lot of the moments in here that we get between the family and kind of all of the catch-ups with them and updates with things that are going on with the Ramsey house that they have and just all of the siblings. So I did love a lot of that. I love how it's kind of moving on the plot as well for the setup of the next book for the hero and heroine. Liked all those moments. It was just the hero and the heroine's relationship in here I just was not a fan of. So 3 stars for this one for me. Next, I jumped into another historical romance. So this is The Perfect Rake by Anne Gracie. So this is an author that I read a couple months ago for the first time, and I didn't really love that series. I think it was like her Chance sister series. And so a bunch of people had recommended this book for me to try instead. And so I'm so glad I gave this author another try because this one I gave 4 stars to. This is the first book I believe in her Meridew sister series, and in here basically the heroine is one of 5 daughters, and they all live with their grandfather who is abusive. So just know that there is abuse, physical abuse on page into this book throughout. And so in here, basically the heroine, she loves her sisters dearly and she wants to get them out from under her grandfather's clutches. And so some things happen at the beginning of the story where they're able to get away and take off. So it goes from there with them eventually getting into the hero's world. So the hero in here, he is an ultimate rake, which I love a rake hero. And I really liked in here how he falls really hard for the heroine. The heroine is also described as the most plain of all of her sisters. Like all of her sisters are beautiful, but everybody always refers to her as the plain one. And I like in here how the hero is so thrown off by that. Like every time somebody mentions it or will mention her and they're like, oh, the plain one. And he's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, do you need glasses? Because that woman is stunning. And so I love when the hero sees the heroine as just beautiful and amazing. And he is just like flabbergasted every time somebody brings that up. So this one, I feel like it has a lot of like wit and charm to it, which was fun after kind of like the heavy start of the series with the abuse. So I enjoyed this one overall. I think towards the end though, it started to get very repetitive. Like there was times I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, did I rewind it? Because we're having the same conversations, the same situations over and over again, but it was not the case. It's just very repetitive and it is very slow burn. So they don't even get together until 90% of the story. So just know that before going in. I just enjoyed this one. I would definitely check out the rest of the series because I really loved the characters in here. So yeah, 3.5, 4 stars for me. Next, I had an ALC of Firebird by Juliet Cross, and this one I sadly did not like. I gave this one 2 stars. This one I was sent an early audio of it from the publisher, and so I honestly didn't know anything about this one before going in. I knew it was a romantasy and there was possibly dragons involved, and it was Juliet Cross, who I have enjoyed her books in the past, but her recent releases I haven't really loved, and so I decided to just give it a go anyways. So this one I feel like the marketing done for it is not done very well because I feel like I went in not knowing what this was going to be about and then was just kind of like thrown off by what it is about. So basically in here it's a reimagining of ancient Rome, so kind of that ancient Roman setting, but in here the Romans also have dragon shifters and gods and kind of the titans, and they're kind of like just all mixed together, and so that's kind of like the fantastical element of it. I will say this is the first of a series, and so I feel like the kind of world building and the magic system of it all isn't explained very well. I'm sure that will come to be later in the books, but like I'm not going to continue on. Basically in here it's an ancient Rome setting, and I feel like in theory maybe that was a good idea, but when you're actually like thinking of things that were going on during that time, do we really want to read that? I personally don't. So in here, it is a master and slave setup between the hero and the heroine. The hero is a kind of Roman general where he is the nephew of the emperor, and the heroine is a dancer whose entire village and her clan got taken out by the Roman army. And so in here, the hero sees her one time dancing and immediately wants her. So he acquires her, takes her into his household, and so it has that very much power imbalance set up between them, which was just very icky to me, and it kind of goes throughout the entire book. Like, sure, the hero wants to secretly rebel and all of those things, but I feel like the dynamic between the hero and the heroine was so off. Power imbalance of it all, it just felt very icky and cringy when I was reading it, as well as there's kind of like this faded aspect to the romance, which I felt like made it even worse. Like, you'd think it would make it better, but I feel like it made it worse because did the heroine have like any agency in any of this situation? I feel like she didn't. So it kind of goes from there. So their relationship was just very, I don't know, the scenes between them very cringy, very icky that I didn't love. There's just all this like violence towards women in general. Other women in the book, there is rape on page, sexual assault, violence, all of these things. And I'm just like, do we need to see that on page so much? Like, I know these times were crazy and rough, but I was just like, I don't know, like, why do we need it in a book? Especially when you were able to reimagine it and include dragons. We couldn't like maybe take out some of this violence towards women on page. I don't know. It just wasn't it for me. 2 stars. I have a whole like rant about it on Goodreads if you want to check out more. Just not it for me, so I won't continue on. All right, so then I binged the Shifting Fate series by Tessa Hale. So these are 3 Why Choose romances, paranormal, wolf shifters. Let's get into them. I love the series so much. First up is Spark of Fate. This is the first book in the series. The series recently got new covers with gorgeous sprayed edges and just like beautiful details. So this is a Why Choose paranormal wolf shifters where there's 1 heroine and 5 heroes. I love wolf shifter romances, so I was very excited to get to this series. This was actually the author's first series, and it was the last one that I had to read to be caught up on her backlist. I was obsessed. The audiobooks are available on Hoopla. This one I gave 4.5 stars to, rounded up to 5 stars. I love this one. Basically, it starts off with the heroine, and she gets into a car accident at the beginning of the story, loses her sister, her family ends up moving across the country, and they move to Washington, and now their family has kind of fallen apart. The heroine's mother is very mean and cruel to her and kind of blames her for the car accident and the loss of her sister, and the heroine just kind of like has nobody, and so she has this new school. She meets the heroes who are very much into taking care of her, and I was just obsessed. I really love this author's Why Choose romances. I love how all of the characters feel super different and unique, the heroes I should say. There are heroes who are broody, some who immediately want to give in to the heroine, there are others who are more standoffish, but all of them are so protective. I loved in here as well the heroine kind of finding out secrets about her life and things she didn't know, and it just kind of goes from there. So yeah, 4.5/5 stars for the first book, which is Spark of Fate. Book 2 is A Mark of Stars. This one I gave 4 stars to. I feel like I can't really say too much. It's just a continuation of the same characters. And here, the heroine in particular finds kind of her powers, abilities, her life. And so this is the continuation of that one. So book 2, 4 stars for me. And then the third book is Bond of Destiny. And this one I gave 4 stars to as well. I just love the characters overall and just seeing the continuation of their story and seeing how it all came to be. If you love Why Choose paranormal, this author just does them so well. Like I said, Wolf Shifters, which is one of my favorites to read. Highly recommend. 4 stars for the last book as well. And they're just absolutely stunning, like the sprayed edges, these beautiful books. Highly recommend you check them out. They are on KU, but the audios were also available through my library on Hoopla, so definitely check that out and get to the Shifting Fate series. All right, and then the last book I've read so far for March is The Girl from Greenwich Street by Lauren Willig. So this one I had an advanced audiobook of, and this one I ended up giving 3 stars to. This one kind of grabbed my attention because of the tagline, because it says that it is a novel of Hamilton Burr and America's first murder trial, and so it has kind of that like true crime type of element to it, but make it, what, 1800s, 1799, somewhere in there. So this one I thought was okay. It was a bit of a slog to get through, honestly, and I hadn't realized at the time that I have read this author in the past, many years ago, and I didn't really jive with her writing then either, so maybe it's a me thing, but I felt like this one was just very tedious to get through. I mean, I did like aspects of it and how we get a lot of the different characters we're following, whether it is the lawyers or the kind of witnesses or victims or people who knew the victims. We kind of get some of their stories and lives more than just like the actual case. So I did like those aspects, but overall just left me feeling very sloggy, like getting through it. So 3 stars for me. All right, so those are all 20 books I've read so far for March. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of these, if you're going to pick any of these up, if you had any favorite book of March, I would love to know. Like I said at the beginning, I linked all of the books and the authors in the description of the video, so if you missed any, want to go back, they are all linked below for you. If you'd rather leave me an emoji in the comments today to let me know that you watched this video, leave me a tent emoji, since in Out of the Woods, they end up going on that wilderness retreat and having to stay in a tent. So do that. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!